Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Sweet Tea and Second Chances by Dylann Crush. Narrated by Carly Robbins and Aiden Snow. 1. Cassie. The first time I saw Robbie Jordan's penis, we were 5 years old. He called it his fire hose and took great pleasure in showing me how he could spray the tulips in my Grandma Macon's front flower beds from 3 feet away. I turned every shade of green with envy. Then I hiked up my skirt and tried to do the same. A hot stream of pee trickled down my leg. He laughed so hard he fell on the grass. That was over 20 years ago. Now, seeing him lounging buck naked on a patch of grass about 15 feet away, only one thought flooded my rattled brain. Boy, has he ever filled out. I gulped in a mouthful of fresh country air, pressed my hands to my hips, and stomped down a well-worn path to the spring-fed pond on the edge of my grandparents' property. "Robbie, what do you think you're doing?" He grabbed a t-shirt off the grass and held it over his crotch as he scrambled to his feet. Putting a hand up to shield his eyes from the setting sun behind me, he asked, "Cassafras? It's just Cassie to you." I hadn't seen him in over 9 years, and the sight of his naked, chiseled chest plowed into me like a wrecking ball to the gut. "What are you doing here?" "I was just clearing out some brush around the pond. I heard you were coming out to take a look at the place, but I didn't think you'd be here for a few days." His gaze raked over me, and his tongue slipped out to run along his scruffy upper lip. "You're looking good, Cass." The words rolled off his tongue in a Missouri country drawl, as the sun's rays bathed him in shades of gold and orange. Good God, even after all these years, he still had an effect on me. I tucked an escaped chunk of hair back into my complicated updo and attempted to clear the giant lump from my throat. "Since when does clearing brush require naked sunbathing?" "Aw, hell, Cassie girl. It's hard work, so I went for a dip. I was just drying off. When did you become such a prude?" He bent down to grab his jeans, giving me a side glimpse of his magnificent sculpted ass. Michelangelo's David didn't have anything on Robbie's glutes. I fanned myself and pulled my clingy rayon t-shirt away from my body. Air. I needed air. It couldn't be more than 75 degrees where I stood in the shade of the giant oak tree. Why was it suddenly so hot? "I'm not a prude. Just a little surprised to see you here, that's all." "And so much of you." I dropped my hands to my sides, suddenly at a loss as to what to do with them. He smiled, that same smug grin he'd always given me, like 9 years hadn't passed without a word between us. My stomach clenched, and I fought the urge to wrap my arms around him and nestle against his chest like I did way back when the world belonged to us. As he hopped around on one foot, he shoved one leg into a pair of well-worn jeans while still attempting to hold the shirt in place. "For crying out loud, get dressed and then we can talk." I spun around, knocking my teenage angst back into the past, and marched the 20 yards to my SUV. "Lighten up, Cassie. You used to be fun. I remember you taking a bare-bottomed dip or two in this same swimming hole once upon a time." His voice followed me up the path, pulling at the lid of the treasure chest of memories I'd slammed shut years ago. Robbie damn Jordan. What was he doing here anyway? Last I'd heard, he'd moved to Arizona, or somewhere out west. I hadn't counted on running into this particular blast from my past. I was a woman on a mission. A new life waited for me in Dallas. A business opportunity, a blossoming love affair, and a whole series of promising tomorrows. I just needed to fix up Grandma and Grandpa's old place and sell it. That would give me the funds I needed. Crossing my arms across my chest, I leaned against my SUV. Then I remembered I had on white linen capris. "Shh." Shoot. I pushed off the car, taking a nice layer of dirt with me. I'd forgotten just how darn filthy things could get around here. As I attempted to angle the side mirror to catch a glimpse of my dusty derriere, Robbie came ambling up the path, fully clothed and smiling from ear to ear. I jumped at the sight of him and brushed my hands across my bum. The spring should be good for a while now. Hopefully the top layer of scuzz will go away now that the water's moving again. One thing less to worry about. I suppose I should thank you. His Lynyrd Skynyrd t-shirt stretched tight across his broad shoulders, and those faded jeans sat low on his hips. My heart skittered to match the beat that being around Robbie had always demanded. The last time I'd seen him without a shirt on, his chest hadn't been nearly as defined. Of course, my own chest had done some filling out in the 9 years since we'd shared an intimate moment. As his eyes flickered over me, a pleased-as-punch grin shone upon his scruffy, tanned face. He looked different. Older. Dare I say, wiser, somehow? But the green-eyed gaze boring into me was the same one I'd lost myself in every summer from Memorial Day to Labor Day. You're welcome. He tossed a thumb over his shoulder and gestured to the pond. Sorry about that. I didn't think you'd be here until the weekend. I waved a hand in front of my face in a pathetic attempt to wipe away the vision of his naked lounging bod that had been permanently etched into my mind. Don't worry about it. I thought you moved away. Yeah, well, I'm back for good now. He pulled a baseball cap on over his thick sandy blonde hair. You staying for a while? Back for good? All the air in my lungs whooshed out of me. I towed at a fist-sized rock with the tip of my heeled sandal while I drew in a calming breath. Not too long, I hope. I just needed to get this place fixed up and on the market. He shifted from one foot to the other, his voice going soft and quiet. Sorry about your grandma. I didn't hear about the funeral till after it happened. I would have been there if I'd known. I nodded inside, tamping down the thread of tears at Robbie's gentle reference to my grandma. She was ready. She missed my granddad so much. It was time. Mrs. Hayes said you're gonna sell. I didn't want to believe her. My breath caught in my chest. What's it matter to you what I do with the place? Lots of memories here, Cass. He hooked his thumbs through his belt loops, and his gaze drilled into mine from under the brim of his cap. I looked away. He was right. I did have lots of memories of this place. It was a part of me. Had been since I was a kid, and I'd always have a special spot in my heart for this tiny wedge of land in southwestern Missouri. As for the memories of Robbie Jordan, they could stay here and rot for all I cared. What happened between us was in the past, and that's exactly where it would stay. I'm heading up to check out the house. I opened the driver's side door and climbed inside. I've got to get going or I'd come with you. Let me know if you need anything. I'm staying at my dad's place. Really? There had never been anything but bad blood between Robbie and his dad, Jefferson Barron Jordan Sr. He'd been the Nestor County Sheriff ever since I could remember. Don't look so surprised. A lot's changed since you were here last. He covered the distance to my door in a few long, slow strides. I pulled my legs inside the car and settled behind the wheel as he pressed my door shut, leaving his hands lingering on the doorframe. It's really good to see you. Cassiopeia. He filled my open window, sending the scent of sunshine and fresh grass my way. Nobody calls me by my full name, just Cassie, okay? Unsettled, I turned the key in the ignition and slammed the gear shift into drive. I pressed on the gas and inched down the gravel road. He pulled his hands away and yelled out after me, "Oh, yeah? Well, I go by Rob now. Remember that." A lot had changed? That was an understatement. I glanced in the rearview mirror. Robbie stood in the middle of the road, arms at his sides, staring after me. I crested a hill, and he was gone. So long, Robbie Jordan. Goodbye and good riddance. Seeing him again had stirred up all kinds of nonsense inside me. Nonsense like memories of warm summer nights spent in the back of his truck and skinny dipping in the pond. As the white farmhouse where I'd spent so many summers loomed ahead, I stuffed all thoughts of Robbie Jordan back into the box I'd trapped them in years ago. The sooner I got started on my fixer-upper project, the sooner I'd get out of Swallow Springs, Missouri, and back to my real life. A life with no room for Robbie freaking Jordan and his glistening six-pack abs.
Robbie. Cassie pulled away, her fancy little SUV stirring up a cloud of dust in her wake. I hadn't been lying when I told her she looked good. She'd always been easy on the eyes, especially when she was all worked up over something. The last time I'd seen her, she'd been hovering in between the sweet girl I'd fallen in love with at age 5 and a full-fledged woman. She was different now, definitely grown in all the right places. I climbed in my beat-up half-ton truck, then made my way a mile back down the gravel road to the turnoff to Dad's place. His 50 acres backed up to the Macons, and the pond straddled the property line, putting half of it on their side and the other half on ours. My eyes adjusted to the darkness as I entered the house. The smell of antiseptic and stale cigarette smoke hung heavy in the air. Wouldn't kill him to open up a window or two every once in a while. My work boots left a dusty trail on the hardwood floor as I moved across the room and lifted the shades. The late afternoon sun poured in through the wavy glass of the aged window panes. A rerun of the Andy Griffith Show flickered on the TV. Dad sat in the cracked leather recliner, his oxygen tube resting under his nose, a cigarette burned almost down to the filter between his fingers. Sound asleep. I grabbed the cigarette and stamped it out in the overflowing ashtray in his lap. "What are you doing, Pop? You trying to blow up the whole damn house?" He lifted an eyelid and stared at me, the whites of his eyes tinted with yellow. "What do you care? You'd be better off without me," his voice cracked. He may be right, but I wasn't going to let him go out like that, not on my watch. The pack of cigarettes sat on the table next to him, and I crushed them in my fist. "You're on oxygen. Doc said no more smoking." A coughing fit racked his frail body, and he hawked something into a tissue. "You afraid it's gonna kill me?" "Nah, you're already doing a pretty good job of that yourself." I turned away, taking the cigarettes and ashtray with me to dump into the trash can under the kitchen sink. "Where'd you get these anyway? Dewey been to visit you again?" "It's not like I drove to the store and got 'em myself." That was for sure. He hadn't left the house for the past 3 months unless I'd driven him into town for an appointment. The doc had given him another 6 months before the cancer and cirrhosis finished him off for good. I wasn't going to be responsible for helping him along, no matter how much easier things might be without him around. "Dewey stopped by. Said the Macon girl is back." The words left his mouth in a growl as he rubbed a bony hand over his sparse beard. "She's not a Macon. That was her mom's maiden name. She's got that Macon blood. Once a Macon, always a Macon." He spat the words and leaned over to lower the footrest, grunting with the effort. I grabbed onto the handle and flipped it down for him. "Let me help you with that." "I can still do some things myself, you know." He swatted at my hands. "Yeah, like drink and smoke yourself to death." As much as I'd like to see him try to rally, it was too late for that. "You seen her yet?" "Who?" I didn't want to talk about Cassie with my dad, not until I figured out what I wanted to do about her being back in town. "The Macon girl." I shook my head. No sense arguing with him about a name. "Yeah, I saw her on the way in. That girl was trouble when she was younger, and she's still trouble now." He grabbed a can of Tab off the table and took a long sip. "I hear she's selling the place. Dewey's gonna take a look." "Cassie's not trouble. I was the one who'd always gotten into trouble. She'd just usually been standing next to me." He tried to focus on me over the rim of his bifocals. You stay away from her. She's bad news just like her mama was. You got a good thing going with that, Caroline. Don't you go and fuck it up. I told you, Dad, Caroline and I are taking some space. I'm not screwing anything up. Besides, I don't think Cassie will be here very long. Something bad had gone down between my dad and Cassie's mom, but it had happened years before I came along, and no one had ever been willing to talk about it. Caroline Hayes is the best damn thing to ever happen to you. He pointed a shaky finger at me. God only knows what the hell she sees in you. That was the one and only thing my dad and I could agree on. I had no idea what Caroline saw in me either. She was practically Swallow Springs royalty. Not only was her mom the most successful realtor in the county, her dad owned what was left of the downtown. She'd also been the homecoming queen, dairy duchess, pork producer's princess, and for the past several months, most folks considered her my girlfriend. At the ripe old age of 27, all of her friends had already tied the knot with their high school sweethearts. Caroline had given me the summer while she was teaching English in South America to figure out what I wanted from our relationship. Come August, I'd either be sliding a ring on her finger or be shut out of any construction jobs within a 50-mile radius. Her dad had been perfectly clear about that. I can use the work. I'm going to offer to help Cassie fix the place up. Dad hadn't earned a real paycheck in over 2 years since he'd been forced into early retirement from the sheriff's department. When I moved back to town to take care of him, he told me they'd shut him out of his pension because he was getting sick. I'd heard rumors that 20 years of drinking on the job had finally caught up with him, and he'd officially been fired. Didn't matter now. Growing up as Sheriff Jordan's kid hadn't been easy. He'd ruled the county with an iron fist and lorded over his household with a leather belt. Hell, that's part of the reason I'd spent so much time at the Macon place. John and Doris Macon always had a friendly smile and something fresh out of the oven waiting for me. They also had Cassie every summer from June until August. The cookies were good, but she was the real reason I spent the majority of my summers crossing the back pasture between us. I gotta go. Baseball practice at the high school tonight. Leftovers are in the fridge for dinner. Dad scowled. Can't believe they pay you to coach that game. You don't know shit about baseball. Couldn't even keep your scholarship. Those times are gone, Pops. I moved into the bedroom and changed into a pair of loose shorts and my sneakers. He mumbled to himself. If your brother was still alive, he'd have made something out of his life. A familiar wave of shame washed over me. Yeah, Jeffy would have shown us all. If he were still alive, maybe I wouldn't be stuck here in the middle of nowhere trying to grow a business while playing nursemaid to my dad. I still held out hope that something good could come out of my brother's death. I'd been working on a way to honor his memory. A few more jobs, and I might finally have enough to break ground on the community baseball field I'd been planning since I got back to town. See you later tonight. I grabbed an apple from a bowl on the counter and charged toward the front door. At least Cassie was in town. That was something to look forward to, even if she didn't seem thrilled to see me. It was time to clear the air between us over things that had happened long ago. Looked like fate was on my side with this one. She was back.
2. Cassie. I woke up drenched in sweat and kicked off the sheets. It wasn't hot outside, but I'd forgotten to open the window in the front room to create a cross breeze, like my grandma had always done. The air in the bedroom wrapped around me like one of her prize-winning quilts on a hot summer day. It didn't help that visions of a half-naked Robbie had paraded through my dreams. My clock showed 2:28 a.m. I'd always had a hard time sleeping the first night away from home. I moved from the bedroom, across the kitchen, and to the window in the front room in 12 steps. The window groaned as it separated from the sill. I closed my eyes as the smell of honeysuckle floated in on the night breeze and took me back 2 years ago. Just pick one off and taste it, Robbie nabbed another white flower from where it nestled against a net of emerald green leaves and sucked the single drop of juice from its center. A whole pile of discarded blooms crushed under his bare feet as he eyed his next victim. "Stop, Robbie! You're ruining them!" "Come on, Cassie. Just try one, then we'll go look for frogs at the pond." His teasing eyes dared me to pick a bud from my grandmother's beloved honeysuckle vine. She'd shoot us out to play in the yard while she canned strawberry jam. I looked over the choices, settling on a large bloom. I reached out with a tentative hand. "Ooh, that's a good one. Go on, try it." I snapped the flower off the vine and raised it toward my face, separating the stamen from the base. As I opened my mouth to suck the drop of sweet nectar into my mouth, a yellow jacket emerged from the flower. "Watch out!" Robbie tried to swat it away, but it was too late. Pain like 1,000 needles pierced my tongue. I dropped the flower on the ground and ran screaming into the kitchen. "Grandma! Grandma, I got stung!" My grandma gathered me against her red and blue checkered apron and leaned down, wiping the tears off my swelling cheeks. She turned to Robbie. "What happened, Robert?" He sold me out in a heartbeat. Didn't even think twice about it. "She was messing with the honeysuckle, Mrs. Macon. I told her not to. One of them yellow jackets flew right into her mouth and must have stung her on the tongue." Grandma waggled a wooden spoon in Robbie's face. "Now, I told y'all not to bother those vines this time of year. Robbie, go get some ice from the icebox. Cassie, come here, darlin'. Sit down a spell and let me take a look." I shot Robbie a look of death, and he smiled as he left the kitchen for the back porch where the old refrigerator whirred. I spent the rest of the day propped up on the couch with an ice cube on my tongue, watching Grandma putter around the kitchen. She sent Robbie back across the pasture to his house, but he snuck over later that night to bring me an orange push-pop. He'd smuggled it out of the freezer and ran all the way across the tall grass to get it to me. When I pushed up the plastic handle, sticky orange liquid ran over my thumb. Most of it had melted, but it still tasted good. I leaned my head against a pane of the cool glass and inhaled a deep breath of the honeysuckle as the memory faded. Grandma used to make me warm milk when I couldn't sleep. Maybe that would help. I passed through the kitchen and grabbed the half-gallon of milk out of the fridge. I'd stopped at the little corner store before turning off the paved 2-lane road and onto the 3 miles of gravel to get to the house. Old Man Morris had owned the tiny shop for forever. He had 2 ancient rusty gas pumps and sold necessities like milk, chewing tobacco, and 12 kinds of live bait. I'd picked up a loaf of bread, half a gallon of milk, and a dozen farm-fresh eggs. That would last me until I could get to the real supermarket in town. As I waited for the microwave to heat my mug, I looked around the kitchen. Nothing had changed except the thick layer of dust covering the old Formica table. Big Bertha, the cast iron, wood-burning stove squatted in the corner. The linoleum blackened around the base from daily cooking fires. Faded, ruffled yellow curtains still hung in the window over the chipped porcelain sink. When Dad and I came to move my grandma to the assisted living facility in Kansas City 3 years ago, we'd only been able to take the essentials. Since then, he'd been too busy with his new wife and family to come back and worry about packing up the life of the woman who, once upon a time, had been his mother-in-law. Oh, sure, I'd meant to get back and take care of things myself. But between moving into a new apartment, switching jobs to work with one of the chefs to be watched in downtown Dallas, and making time to visit Grandma 500 miles away, I'd let it go. The microwave dinged, and I grabbed the mug and took it into the front room. I pulled the sheet off the sofa, sending a million dust particles into the air, nestling into the corner of the giant red velvet settee. I drew my feet up under me and took a sip of warm milk. The tension drained from my body as I relaxed deeper into the couch. Grandma had always been right. After we'd moved her, It seemed less and less important to come back and deal with someone else's life full of things. When she died 3 months ago, and I found out she'd left me the old farmstead, I'd meant to come then. But it wasn't until an opportunity came up to partner in a new restaurant that I managed to make it a priority. I'd given myself 2 months to get this place in tip-top shape and raise the funds I needed to buy into the new restaurant. From what I'd seen so far, it would take every bit of time and a whole lot of elbow grease to make my deadline. I was up for the challenge, as long as I could stay on track and keep Robbie as far away as possible. He'd almost derailed me once, and I wasn't about to let him get close enough to do it again.
3. Robbie. Oh, no you don't. Cassie stood on the front porch, hands on her hips, watching me pull into the gravel drive. I eased the truck to a stop and climbed out of the driver's side. My feet sank into the dew-covered grass. How's it going? You get right back in your truck and turn around. I don't need your help. A streak of dirt smudged her cheek and her hair piled into a crazy knot on top of her head. Did she still wear it long? My fingers itched to wrench it down and find out. So you survived last night? I wanted to check in and see if you need anything. I squinted up at her from under the brim of my cap. It's a big job fixing this place up. Thought maybe you could use some help. I've got a construction company now. Construction? She laughed. The Robbie I used to know was better at tearing things apart than putting them back together. She relaxed her arms and grabbed onto the railing of the porch. So that's what you're doing now? Yep. Swallow Springs' #1 custom construction foreman at your service. I tipped the brim of my cap at her. #1, huh? You must have a lot of tools. My heart flopped around in my chest as her big brown eyes peeked up at me from under long dark lashes. She'd always been able to turn on her flirty side. You got that right, Cassie girl. I've got all the right tools, and I know how to use them. I gave her my best seductive smile. She tapped her lip as if deep in thought. So how many other construction companies are there in Swallow Springs exactly? Damn, she knew me too well. Well, I suppose there aren't too many other options if you want to support a local business. I guess I've got that going for me. I stepped onto the porch next to her and pushed on the railing. It cracked, then separated from the post. Hey, watch it! A flash of anger blazed in her eyes, and she took a step back, crossing her arms over her midsection. You're tearing the place apart. I raised my eyebrows as her breasts pushed up against the neckline of her low-cut tank top. Her face took on a tint of pink when she realized what had caught my attention, and she wheeled around. The screen door squealed on its hinges, then crashed closed behind her. I chuckled as I followed her into the house. It's dry rot, Cass. Whole porch probably needs to be replaced. I've got it all under control. She slammed a kitchen cabinet and poured a mug of steaming coffee from the pot. Tom Schmidt is coming out later today. She cupped the mug between her hands and took a sip. Her throat moved as she swallowed, drawing my gaze to the soft hollow at the base of her neck. My mouth had spent many a warm summer night exploring that exact spot. My lips twitched in remembrance. She eyed me from across the room. Tom's done work around here before. I'm sure he'll be able to help me with anything I need. I snickered. Oh, Schmitty? Hell, he's got 1 foot in the grave. Probably can't even see far enough to tell you what work needs to be done. Her chin tipped up. Her jaw set in familiar defiance. He's a friend of the family, and my granddad trusted him. I'm sure he'll do a fine job. I whipped my cap off to run a hand through my hair. Hell, I'm a family friend, too. And you wouldn't have to worry about my pacemaker giving out. She leaned up against the counter. You were a friend of the family. Tom still is. Jesus, Cass, I shook my head. What did I ever do to you? I'm not even going to go there. Tom's coming over this afternoon. She nodded, as if trying to convince herself. He'll take care of the construction, plus he's willing to wait for payment until I make the sale. One thing hadn't changed. Cassie Belmont was still the most stubborn woman I'd ever had the pleasure to know. I wanted to talk, to try to mend fences that had been torn through the years, but now didn't seem the time. Suit yourself. I made my...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?